Today I'm going to geek out with a review of the wireless electronic drivetrain upgrade kit from Wheeltop. This is the OX model, which is basically the mountain bike version. As you might expect, it's designed to be compatible with 1x systems featuring a wide range cassette up to 1052, like those available from Sram and others out there. I installed the Wheeltop system on my fat bike a couple months ago to see how it would handle cold Idaho winters. I've learned a lot, and I feel like now I have some useful insight and objective takeaway worth sharing with you, especially if you're considering going the wireless electronic shifting route for ultra endurance and bikepacking races. First off, everything shows up nicely packaged and well protected inside a padded box. The contents of the box include the OX derailleur, a charging cable for the derailleur, a shifter with a mounting clamp and a CR2032 battery installed, and an instruction booklet. I've been testing the OX version 1.0, but Wheeltop recently released version 2.0 and it's currently priced at $399 on their website. According to Wheeltop, the main changes, other than a slight difference in appearance and placement of the limit screws, is a more stable Bluetooth connection between the shifter and derailleur and better damping in the clutch mechanism for more consistent chain tension over varied terrain. By the way, I've never had any issues with my shifter and derailleur communicating, nor chain slap or clutch related issues of any sort. The OX wireless upgrade is very comparable with the Sram AXS GX upgrade kit that I have on this mountain bike right here, and that's currently priced around $550, making the Wheeltop around $150 cheaper. Moving on to weight, the Wheeltop OX derailleur comes in at 407 grams on my scale, while the Sram AXS GX derailleur weighs in at 433, so it's a little bit lighter, even though it has a much bigger battery, which I'll discuss in a minute. And if you're curious, the mechanical GX derailleur I replaced with the Wheeltop weighs in at 300 grams. The Wheeltop shifter with clamp weighs 70 grams, and an AXS GX shifter without clamp weighs 69 grams. Also for reference, the mechanical GX shifter I replaced with the shift cable and housing weighs 168 grams. And if you're thinking what I'm thinking, yes, you're correct. When swapping from the mechanical drivetrain to the electronic drivetrain, the weight winds up being pretty much equal, give or take a few grams. The electronic derailleur is about 100 grams heavier, but the electronic shifter, sans cable and housing is about 100 grams less, so it's basically a wash. I'm not going to do a deep dive on the whole installation process, but I will share a few key points that I learned when I first started testing the Wheeltop system. First off, the instruction booklet that comes in the box can be confusing and some terminology definitely gets lost in translation, so I'd recommend watching an install video made by somebody whose primary language is English. Luckily, there's plenty out there and I'll link to a good one in the description. With that said, I didn't watch a video beforehand and I still found everything mostly straightforward. One welcome surprise was that the shifter and derailleur came paired with each other right out of the box, so that's one less hassle you have to deal with. But if you need to pair them, it's as easy as waking up the derailleur by shaking it or plugging it in to charge and then pushing and holding the pairing / fine tuning button on the shifter for a few seconds and then they'll sync up. As far as mounting the shifter to your handlebars, the Wheeltop clamp does not have a hinge, so you need to remove your grip to slide it on. This isn't the end of the world, but it is slightly annoying, so I'd hope to see an updated clamping option in the future. To attach the shifting module to the mount, Wheeltop uses a similar bolt-on system as Sram, and I was secretly hoping I'd be able to attach the OX shifter directly to a hinged Sram matchmaker clamp that I already had mated to my brake lever. This would forego the need for a second clamp altogether, no grip would need to be removed, and it would have been super clean and simple. But unfortunately, nope, there's some subtle size differences to the mounts and bolts that keep Sram and Wheeltop from playing nice together, so don't even try. Maybe someone will come out with an adapter or workaround, but for now, it is what it is. Oh yeah, neither of the shifter mounting bolts come with any thread locker on them, so I'd also recommend adding a little of your own blue Loctite for some extra security. The derailleur attaches with a traditional bolt-on style that threads onto your hanger, and you snug it up with a 5mm Allen wrench. No surprises there. It also employs inner and outer limit screws and a B-gap screw, so this should be nice and familiar to anyone who's dealt with setting up rear derailleurs before. Once your limits and B-gap is set, the most important thing is that you're in the smallest cog when you start the initial calibration. If you're not in the smallest cog when you start the process, it'll throw everything off and you won't be able to shift back down to the smallest gear, and you'll be scratching your head wondering what gives, and the only way to fix it is to go into fine-tuning mode and then micro-adjust the derailleur all the way down, one tiny movement at a time, and restart the calibration from scratch. And yes, I did mess this up, so please learn from my mistake. Speaking of fine-tuning or trim mode, once you've completed the main calibration, a nice feature is that you can dial in each gear on its own. So if everything's shifting well, but one gear is just slightly loud or it's not perfectly lined up, you can adjust it on its own without affecting the rest of the shifting. I personally haven't had to mess with this feature much since my shifting lined up pretty well from the get-go, but I could see it being especially helpful if you slightly tweak your derailleur hanger and you don't have a chance to fix it properly, or you just have one or two gears that aren't feeling perfect. You can do the initial calibration and fine-tuning directly through your shifter or through the Wheeltop app. I personally prefer doing the initial setup with the app because you can shift and fine-tune each gear from the same screen. Whereas if you're doing it with the shifter, you have to keep switching back and forth between shifting and fine-tuning modes, which is more obnoxious and time-consuming. But either way, the process is easy. One quick note before I discuss the app is that the Wheeltop derailleur does not have a cage lock like you might be used to with Sram. This just means you can't pull the cage down and have it locked in place while you're taking your wheel in and out. It's not a big deal, especially if you're used to Shimano derailleurs. They don't have that feature either. But if you've been spoiled by your current Sram derailleur, you might be disappointed when you go to push the lock button and it's not there. As far as the app goes, I like it because it's simple and it gets the job done. It takes 2 seconds to pair your components to your phone and then you're off to the races. I was surprised to see you can actually record your rides through the app and even pair it with a heart rate monitor, etc. I don't use this feature because I have Strava and other dedicated data capture, but hey, the option is there. I use the Wheeltop app purely for shifting calibration and to keep tabs on battery life. Nothing more, nothing less. The app shows a percentage reading of the derailleur battery life, as well as approximately how many shifts you have left before it dies. And it also tells you the voltage reading of the battery in the shifter, which is also helpful. As with the instruction booklet, there's definitely some interesting translation, like how you enter the debug menu to calibrate and fine-tune your shifting, or binding or untying your device in lieu of pairing, or how it calls a cassette a flywheel. I find it kind of funny, but it really would be nice if Wheeltop hired a cyclist with English as their first language to help develop the English language portion of their app, especially since they're pushing their product so hard here in the US. Wheeltop, I am available if you need some help, just saying. Anyway, my drivetrain came prepared for 12 speeds as the default, so I didn't have to do any adjusting there, but the Wheeltop OX can be set up between 3 and 14 speeds in the app as well. I'm not quite sure why anyone would be using it with a 3-speed, but the 13 and 14 speed options are a great idea and it might help keep it future-proof for a while. The only bummer I found with the app is that it relies completely on a Wi-Fi connection or cellular service to work at all. I get it, most apps operate the same way, but if you're out bikepacking somewhere remote without cell service, you can't check your battery life or do any kind of shifting adjustments in an emergency. I mention this because Sram has an off-grid mode in their app that allows you to access both these features through a Bluetooth connection, and you don't even need to log into the Sram app or create an account or any of that stuff to access the off-grid mode. So yeah, Wheeltop, a similar function that allows you to access some of the basic features without the need for cell service or Wi-Fi, would be a nice touch, especially for bikepacking. The shifter is rated to an ingress protection or IP of 65. This means it's highly resistant to dust and water spray and rain from all directions, but it's not waterproof if submerged. As I just mentioned, it's powered by a coin-sized CR2032 lithium-ion battery. I've read that they usually die or become less reliable when they drop below 2.7 volts, so I like that I can keep an eye on it using the app. The buttons on the shifter seemed a little suspect at first, but they have grown on me and I do enjoy them. They press in without much effort, so they don't fatigue my thumb, and they offer a nice positive click. There's different textured patterns etched into the top and bottom buttons, which I guess could be helpful if you're using fingerless gloves or riding with bare hands. But even with full finger gloves, it's easy to know which button you're pressing because the top button is slightly recessed from the bottom one. It's a little hard to explain unless you feel it, but if you're used to mechanical shifters, it's pretty intuitive. You can long press or hold down either button to multi-shift a bunch of gears at a time, and it responds well. But I don't tend to use this feature too often, and I don't use it too much with the AXS either because I can't always tell exactly how many gears I've shifted. I prefer to just quickly single click 2 or 3 or 4 times instead. It's still plenty fast, and I don't have to guess which gear I'm gonna land in. The derailleur is rated to an IP67 standard, which means it's completely protected against dust and can be submerged in water up to 1 meter or 3 feet deep for 30 minutes. Mine came with a 93mm cage length, which again is compatible with up to a 1052 cassette. But they also have shorter cage options if you don't need that wide of a range. The OX derailleur employs a self-adjusting clutch that Wheeltop calls its multi-level damping system. They say this ensures resistance always matches chain tension through all terrain, and I've been pleased with it. No issues with chain slap, I've never dropped the chain, and thumbs up. Overall, the derailleur has a solid, well-built feel. The jockey wheels are nice and smooth, and most importantly, the shifting has been precise and reliable. From so many years of riding, my brain is trained to not shift under heavy load, and I'm pretty nice to my drivetrains, but I have shifted under load plenty of times while climbing or just forgetting and messing up, and it hasn't fazed the Wheeltop OX one bit. I know everything has sounded pretty rosy this far, but I've still got to discuss the potential elephant in the room for anybody thinking about using this drivetrain for bikepacking and multi-day adventures. The derailleur utilizes an internal, non-removable, non-replaceable battery. I know, for bikepacking I always preach redundancy and carrying spare batteries and all that jazz. And when I found out there was no way to swap batteries or carry a spare, it was almost a deal breaker for me. And it might be for you. Not to mention that you can't just click the battery off and bring it inside a restaurant to charge while you're eating. The charging port is on the derailleur itself, which means you need to park your bike near an outlet or have an extension cord, yada yada yada. Even most e-bikes let you park the bike and remove the battery to be charged. But before you click away and say, Alan, you should have told me this at the beginning of the video and not wasted my time, at least let me explain why I don't think you should poo-poo it just yet. By the way, it's not as if Wheeltop did not want to offer a removable battery. When I asked, they confirmed it was due to patent restrictions. Gee, I wonder who might own those patents. Sram! So instead, Wheeltop opted for an integrated 800 milliamp hour battery in their derailleur that they claim is good for 800 charging cycles. For reference, Sram AXS batteries are 300 milliamp hours, so the Wheeltop battery has over 2.5 times the juice. The battery is also completely protected and insulated from the elements, so it's less likely to get damaged or snapped off the derailleur as its Sram AXS counterpart. Sram states their AXS batteries have a life of around 25 hours of ride time when it's being used on a mountain bike rear derailleur. But I've found they average more than that. For reference, when I used my AXS setup on the Colorado Trail Race, I got roughly 68 hours of moving time on one battery before it died and I had to swap it out. Not too shabby. And considering the Wheeltop battery is more than 2.5 times bigger than the AXS battery, it should come as no surprise that the integrated battery lasts much longer. Wheeltop claims that a single charge can last for 3 to 4 months of use, and I've got to admit that had me laughing at first. What does that even mean? Some folks ride once a week, others once a month, or some ride for an hour at a time while others are riding 5 or 6 hours at a time. Some folks shift a ton, some don't. And terrain dictates shifting variables as well. There's so much to think about and so many variables that throwing out 3 to 4 months is too casual for me. And while I do think that 3 to 4 months is a stretch, the point is this battery does last a very long time. Exactly how long? Of course it's going to vary, but based on my real world usage, I lose maybe 1% on a 2 to 3 hour bike ride. It's common for me to go out for a couple hours and have the battery reading the same percentage as it did before I left. And I remind you, it's on my fat bike, which I store in an unheated garage that gets down to around 35 degrees Fahrenheit in the winter. And then I'm going out and riding in temps well below freezing. Right now, my app is showing me around 80% battery life left, and it says there's something like 15,000 shifts remaining. How accurate that is, who knows? And while you can never be exact with batteries, the point again is the battery does last an incredibly long time. Would I like the option to have a spare battery for multi-day rides? Yes, of course, but I also like that it's protected and it's tucked away and I can always charge it in a hotel room. The included cable is also around 2 meters or 6 feet long, so that helps as well. However, I'm not a fan of the proprietary magnetic connection. I'd much rather it use a standard USB-C port or something similar so I don't need to carry and rely solely on the specific Wheeltop cable. And if for some reason I need to charge it while I'm way off the beaten path or there's no outlet around, I can charge it from a cash battery and it barely even takes any juice. Remember, it's an 800 milliamp hour battery, so a 10 or 20,000 milliamp hour power bank doesn't even bat an eyelash at charging it up. So where does that leave us? I think the Wheeltop OX is a well-made, reliable wireless electronic drivetrain upgrade that is priced very fairly. The shifting is crisp and accurate, and again, it's reliable as far as I can tell so far. The battery life is fantastic. It works great in cold weather. I rarely need to charge it. And again, it can be charged directly from a cash battery if I find myself in a jam. However, you need to use this proprietary magnetic cable when charging, and unfortunately, the battery is again non-removable and non-replaceable, which may be a deal breaker for some of you. And the app needs Wi-Fi or cell service to be functional at all, which is also a bummer. Overall, I'd say I am stoked with how it's performed and held up this winter, and I do intend to keep it on my fat bike. I definitely switch it back to mechanical for the Iditarod or other multi-day deep winter expeditions, but I'm confident in it for regular riding, and I'd have no issues using it for shorter ultras like Fat Pursuit 200K, or switching it over to my mountain bike either. Anywho, I want to know your thoughts. Is the removable battery a deal breaker for you, or do you see the bigger internal battery as a bonus? And if you've had any experience with the Wheeltop EDS, please leave your feedback for all of us to learn from. Anywho, I look forward to reading your questions and comments. Please like and share if you enjoyed this video. A huge shout to our sustaining Patreon and channel members for keeping this channel alive. And until next time, ride bikes, give back, pay it forward.